This weekend marked the first flight of ABC charters from Tampa to Havana, Cuba. It's an historic moment for many Cuban Americans here in Tampa. The Cuban government granted anchor Linda Hurtado and photographer Tim Jones visas, and they were on the inaugural flight.
The long lines, wrapped bags, and extra security at Tampa International Airport Saturday signaled a special occasion. The first flight of ABC charters from Tampa to Havana on 9/11 weekend. The Obama administration allowed Tampa and other cities to apply for flights to Cuba. Tampa was one of the first to get it.
The more we can get the traffic diversified, it's a less hardship on the passenger.
On board, 10-year-old Jennifer Fuentes, who turns 11 on 11/11/11. She'll celebrate with a first trip to Havana and a party with family she has never met.
We're gonna celebrate a lot with I have a big family, so there's gonna be a big cake, a big celebration, and it's gonna be incredible.
Also on board, American airline flight attendant Mario Nunez, who has Cuban blood.
40 minutes later, you were landing in a place that heretofore was forbidden. Can we say that? So it was kind of like, wow, this place is so close, yet so far. But it was a special moment.
The flight was quite uneventful until the lush green farms of Cuba came into view. At landing, applause and excitement as passengers got off the plane. Outside the airport, a lineup of those old cars that you've heard about. The one that took Tim and I to the Hotel Nacional had over 300,000 miles on it. While our friends from Tampa reunited with family, we settled into the hotel. Outside, teenagers gathered on what would be equivalent, I guess, to Bayshore Boulevard. And as the sun set, so did our first day in Havana. Reporting from Cuba, Linda Hurtado, ABC Action News.
ABC Action News anchor Linda Hurtado and multimedia journalist Tim Jones are sending us stories from Cuba all this week.
That's right. Because of the technology, though, it takes a while for those stories to arrive here. Yesterday, they witnessed how September 11th will be a day one 11-year-old from Largo won't soon forget.
September 11th is such a somber day for so many, but here in Havana, Cuba, it's quiet, beautiful, and peaceful. And a Largo girl is marking this day by celebrating life with a group of family members she's never met before. In a sleepy beach town called Hamanitas, 45 minutes outside the city of Havana, in the colorful neighborhood of the famous Cuban artist, Fuster. Happy birthday to you. A 10-year-old Largo girl turns 11.
It's gonna be huge, the cake.
The decorations are traditional, but the moment unique. Jennifer Fuentes is turning 11 on 9/11/11. And
it's my first birthday here in Cuba. Never had it before. I'm gonna have my whole family around me, and I'm very happy.
Jennifer flew over on one of the first charter flights from Tampa to Havana. Her mom, born here, understands it's a somber day, but
it's difficult. It's difficult, but wow. 6 years, and I have my family, and I take this for my main.
It's a happy day.
Yes, happy day.
So for this family, this particular 9/11 is about celebrating life. So what is your birthday wish?
My birthday wish? I think I already got my wish, to be here with my family and celebrating an important day for me.
Happy birthday, dear neighbor. Happy birthday to you.
You can follow my reports from Havana by going to my Facebook fan page. Just look for Linda Hurtado, WFTS, under pages. If the internet is working, I'll be posting. Reporting from Havana, Linda Hurtado, ABC Action News. Back in 1998, I stood right here in the Plaza of the Revolution with dozens of Tampa residents and quite literally thousands of Cubans, watching as Pope John Paul II took the stage with Fidel Castro. Back now in 2011, I wondered what had changed. Certainly the parking lot is now empty. A new Castro is in charge, and Cubans seem more willing to talk to an American journalist. Fernando Barral invited us into the kitchen of his Havana home, which is also his private business, a restaurant called the Cactus of Street 33. He's very open when discussing how doing business is slowly changing in Cuba.
Now, they gave the possibility of having the license to sell food and beverages
Fernando says he pays the state monthly and gives them a percentage of his profit at the end of the year. Still, he says, his private business has been profitable.
But now it's a little bit short, so and so. Because there are many restaurants, so a lot of competition, and there are less tourists. With 20 clients a day, the business goes on. Then in a week, we can calculate something like $10 per person, something like that. It would be 1,400 cooks.
Once he's deducted expenses, he says he would have made about 500 convertible pesos, which is a little bit more than $400. But that was a good week, and he says he hasn't had one of those in a while. The Cuban government reportedly licensed nearly 200 types of these private sector activities, where Cubans can earn money without working for the state. They can also hire employees now. Fernando has two. Another change.
They have provided important and very good programs and possibilities for Cuban people to go and spend days at the hotels with privileged prices.
He says the state also lowered the prices of cell phones, and I saw many more of those in the hands of what appeared to be locals on the busy streets away from the tourist hotels. What hasn't changed? The large amount of food, clothing, and medications brought into Cuba by relatives living in America. On the ABC charter flight I traveled on from Tampa to Havana, the line was long with people and essentials. These simple goods appear to still be hard to get for most Cubans. Another change that may help with at least the issue of food, a new law that allows Cuban citizens to acquire land, not own it, but build and use it for their own livelihood, including growing food for the family. We tried to line up an official government interview to confirm this, but weren't able to secure one on this trip. I know I will not please everyone with my reports on Cuba. The division of opinion on this country is still so strong. So all I can do is report on what I see and what I hear while I'm here, and try to give you some insight into what it's like in communist Cuba. Reporting from Havana, Linda Hurtado, ABC Action News. Our first stop in Havana was here at the International Press Center. You have to pay 120 convertible pesos, about $120, to get one of these, a license to be a journalist in Cuba. The first bump in the road, we arrived at 5:15 on Saturday. The office closed at 5. My face in this picture says it all. So what to do? We went back to the hotel and wrote and edited a story about the ABC charter flight, one of the first from Tampa to Havana in 50 years, and the locals on it, including those who came for business and to visit family. We stayed at the Hotel Nacional de Cuba because they had a business center on the 6th floor and internet access, a rarity in Cuba. We needed the internet to feed back our stories to the United States. Here, it takes about 15 minutes. That night in Havana, it took longer than 6 hours. That's why our story about a Largo girl's birthday party on 9/11 aired on 9/12.
Happy birthday to you.
How did we get around? Well, you think it's expensive to rent a car in America? This little baby cost us 400 pesos, which is about equivalent to $400. We're supposed to get about 250 of that back. Come on, let's go.
Old Havana is the place in Cuba.
Luis Valdez, a relative of mine by way of marriage, is a tour guide for a state-run tourism agency. Perfect. He knew exactly where to go to give us the best video opportunities and the most breathtaking pictures.
Well, here we have...
We also interviewed him about life today in Cuba. He took us to meet a local man who owns a private business in Cuba and drove us to a spectacular beach town where we were able to attend the birthday party of a local girl and her Cuban family. Monday morning. This little problem kept Tim and I at the hotel for 4 hours. That's how long it took to get all of our money and documents out of the hotel safe that wouldn't unlock. Despite my best efforts, I think a little of my type A impatient American attitude surfaced. Sigh. Finally out the door at 1 p.m., we went back to the press center and got our official license, and it's a good thing we did. More on that later. Now, working the streets Monday, minus our translator, Luis, we tore through the inner streets of Havana, looking for a farmer's market where Cuban people buy most of their food. The driver was nice. The market was closed. Now, tired and hot, I kept flubbing up stand-ups. Stop, block, or harass us in any way. I'm trying. But we made up for the stress of a very long day with a little Havana rum and some Cuban cabaret. Tuesday morning, we had just enough time to shoot both the Capitol and the Plaza of the Revolution. And as we were leaving, Tim got stopped by a police officer, wanting to see our license to shoot. Good thing we had it. Reporting in Havana has been thrilling, frustrating, fascinating, and at one point, nauseating. I am thankful to the Cuban government for granting us a visa to come in, and we did follow all of their laws. And I can't tell you that anyone tried to harass us, stop us, or block us from doing our job. At least not obviously or intentionally. Well, tonight we wrap up our coverage of Cuba. We flew into Havana Saturday on one of the first flights from Tampa to Havana in 50 years. We returned with a new look at life in a communist country that is so close to us and yet so far from the life most of us live.
It has the charm, the spirit, has the soul.
Luis Valdez makes his living taking visitors on tours of Havana. He says it's a good job when tourism is good. Usually he talks about the Great Morro Fort or Old Havana, but we asked Luis to talk about life for the average Cuban today.
Normally people go to work. They work normally from 7 to 4, from 8 to 5.
Most people work for the government, meaning most Cubans don't own their own businesses, and they get a set salary determined by the state. This bartender told us he makes about 10 convertible pesos a month. That's a little more than $10. But this taxi driver charged us 10 convertible pesos for a half-hour ride. Since he's a state employee, it's hard to know how much he actually pockets. Fernando Barral, who is one of the growing number of Cubans allowed to own a private business, studied to be a mechanical engineer, but he says there was no money to be made in that. With his restaurant,
at the beginning, it gave a lot of profit because we had a lot of tourists, but now it's a little bit short, so and so.
In rural Cuba, life is much different. This is home video taken by relatives of mine by marriage. There's no tourism. Many state jobs are tied to tobacco, factories, and farming.
When you live outside of Havana, I would say the life is more quiet, right? And for example, you are closer to the countryside area, so it's a lot less expensive.
With all this great fertile land, one might ask why American relatives still pack airplanes full of food, clothing, and medications to take to their Cuban families.
We have under a very important, very strong commercial and embargo.
Luis believes the lack of food, clothing, and medicine is due to the U.S. embargo. However, other Cubans and many Cuban Americans suggest communism is to blame. The government does provide rations of rice and other essentials to their citizens. They are also in control of the gas.
People keep their American cars in a very good condition. Some of them are now better than when they came from the factory because people have been improving.
And while there are no auto repair shops, in just about every neighborhood, there is a specialist who lives down the street.
Mostly from the ex-Soviet Union, now Russia. Well, we used to get many parts for the trucks and for the cars. So people use it and then they adapt.
But despite obvious economic hardships, most Cuban people appear to enjoy life. Often through things that are free: music, friends, and family. Well, I know opinions on the island nation are still sharply divided. They actually are divided in my own family. But I was only in Cuba for 2.5 days, so I could only bring back the information I was able to gather while there. If you'd like to see all of my reports as well as pictures, go to my Facebook fan page. Look for Linda Hurtado, WFTS, under Pages.